Good evening. Welcome to the Village Board meeting. Today is January 13th, 2014. If you're watching live on January 13th, we encourage you to call in if you have comments or questions. Our call-in number is 769-1677. Our next regular meeting is scheduled for Monday, January 27, 2 weeks from today at 8 p.m. with a work session at 7. I had a couple of announcements to make, one of which is Shane McGaffey, your school board president and PCTV manager, updated us on an important piece of information about the New York State STAR tax exemption that reduces property taxes for people in their primary residence. This year, the state required recertification in order to maintain your STAR exemption. The deadline was originally December 31 of 2013, but that deadline has been extended, I guess, to a date uncertain. But the bottom line is that at least as of today, January 13, we're informed that it is still possible to register for your STAR exemption if you have not yet done it. You can do so at tax.ny.gov. You can also call 518-457-2036. By the recent report, Mount Pleasant is at 94% recertified for the STAR, and clearly everybody would like to be at 100%. So if you thought you missed the deadline, it sounds like you have a second chance, but that second chance may lapse quickly, so we encourage you to jump as quickly as you can to solve that. I also wanted to report that on Friday night I went to the annual Pleasantville Volunteer Ambulance Corps Installation Dinner, which is the annual event when the Ambulance Corps installs its officers. Congratulations to the new captain of PVAC, Krista Wind, and congratulations to the outgoing captain, Kelly Conley, Krista's sister, who is hardly fading into the distance because after 5 years as the captain, she's serving as the second in command and first lieutenant. So at that same event, Gail Wind, a long-standing member of PVAC, and several times the captain, was also honored for 25 years of active service to Pleasantville Volunteer Ambulance Corps, believed to be the first person ever to achieve that, 25 years of active service actually riding the ambulance. So congratulations to Gail, to Krista, the new captain, to Kelly, the outgoing captain and incoming first lieutenant. Can't ignore Greg Wind. You're getting the idea that PVAC is heavily supported by the Wind family, and if you got that idea, you would be quite right. Needless to say, there are lots of other people who make sure that there's someone to come when you need an ambulance. I can report that there were several people honored who have been giving over 1,000 hours in a year to the Pleasantville Volunteer Ambulance Corps, which is an extraordinary commitment. And on an annual basis, PVAC, without charge to anyone, responds to an average of about 1,000 calls in a 365-day year. So a very busy service, one that we all depend on heavily, and every one of those people deserves our thanks. So hopefully you won't have cause to use their services, but if you see somebody who you know is involved in PVAC, take a moment out of your day to thank them for all they do. Anybody else have any announcements they want to make? Are there any comments from the public on any subject at the moment?
You mean other than benchmark?
Other than benchmark? All right. Did the folks from Benchmark want to present anything at all tonight? Okay.
The only thing, Mr. Mayor, I just want to make sure everybody on the board had received, there was a January 9, 2014 communication from Hudson Property Advisors, Mr. Burns, who was here, Mr. Steinmetz, I believe that was transmitted.
Is this the realtors? The realtor comments?
Right. Yes.
Okay.
Well,
yeah.
a property appraiser.
Yeah.
And that should be part of the record. Everybody's seen that document.
Yes, we did. We also have a slightly revised text of the secret determination that was distributed today, on which I think a number of other members of the public also got when they requested it. A minor revision from that, which was posted in draft on the website on Friday. Okay, I know that there are a number of people interested in the secret determination for the Benchmark Senior Living Project. That's the third resolution. So let's go ahead with our resolutions, starting with number 1. Colleen.
Resolved that pre-check register dated January 13th, 2014, covering pre-check numbers 77092 through 77156, and electronic check numbers 1236 through 1283 have been reviewed, and they are hereby approved as listed below, coming from the General Fund, the Water Fund, the Refuse Fund, the Capital Fund, and the Trust and Agency Fund, totaling $387,900.21.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there comments or questions about the check register? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Jonathan?
Now resolve the Board of Trustees has reviewed the minutes of the meetings held on Monday, December 2nd, and December 16th, and December 31st, 2013, of which I wasn't at the 31st, and they are hereby approved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments or corrections? One of them is a long and extended document. Thank you, Judy.
Yeah, that was.
What's the record for the number of pages?
That was a long one.
Comments or corrections?
No, that looks good.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Brian, 2014-3.
Okay. Resolution issuing a negative declaration for the secret determination of significance by the Board of Trustees of the Village of Pleasantville with respect to the petition by Benchmark Senior Living, Inc. to, one, create an elder care community EC floating district within the village, along with enacting siting and development criteria for any facilities permitted thereunder, two, rezone an approximately 3.9 acre portion of the premises known as 70 Bedford Road in the Village of Pleasantville and currently designated as Section 99.15, Block 3, Lot 67, on the Village of Pleasantville Tax Assessment Map site from the single-family RRR district to the EC district, and three, analyze a conceptual site plan and subdivision in connection with this proposal to develop an 87-unit assisted living facility at this site. I'll abbreviate some of this, whereas...
Yeah, I'm not sure, Mr. Mayor and trustees, that you need to read every whereas.
I'm not going to.
No, we're not.
No, I've been here for 15 years, so I'm no spring chicken on this one.
I don't want to be here for 15 years again.
Yeah, but I'll start with the first one, and then we'll conclude. Whereas on February 7th, 2013, the Village Board received a petition from Zarin and Steinmetz on behalf of Benchmark Senior Living, Inc. for amendments to the zoning ordinance of the Village of Pleasantville concerning lands within the village, specifically an approximately 3.9 acre portion of the real property tax, etc. And it goes on and chronicles the developments from that time all the way until now, the various meetings and the actions of the Village Board. And it is summarized, excuse me, it's a long. I wanted to read this. Whereas, in consultation with the Village Board's legal counsel and planning consultant, it has considered inter alia the following criteria pursuant to 6 NYCRR Section 617.7c. 1, whether the action would result in a substantial adverse change in existing air quality, ground or surface water quality or quantity, traffic or noise levels, a substantial increase in solid waste production, a substantial increase in potential for erosion, flooding, leaching, or drainage problems. 2, whether the action would result in the removal or destruction of large quantities of vegetation or fauna. 3, whether the action would result in the impairment of the environmental characteristics of a critical environmental area as designated pursuant to subdivision 617.14G of this part. 4, whether the action would result in the creation of a material conflict with a community's current plans or goals as officially approved or adopted. 5, whether the action would result in the impairment of the character or quality of important historical, archaeological, architectural, or aesthetic resources or of existing community or neighborhood character. 6, whether the action would result in a major change in the use of either the quantity or type of energy. 7, whether the action would result in the creation of a hazard to human health. 8, whether the action would result in a substantial change in the use or intensity of use of land, including agricultural, open space, or recreational resources. 9, whether the action would result in the encouraging or attracting of a large number of people to a place or places for more than a few days, compared to the number of people who would come to such place absent the action. 10, whether the action would result in the creation of a material demand for other actions that would result in one of the above consequences. 9, almost done, whether the action would result in changes in 2 or more elements of the environment, no one of which has a significant impact on the environment, but when considered together, result in a substantial adverse impact on the environment. Or finally, 12, whether the action would result in 2 or more related actions undertaken, funded or approved by an agency, none of which has or would have a significant impact on the environment, but when considered cumulatively, would meet 1 or more of the criteria in this subdivision. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Pleasantville, pursuant to Part 617 of the SEQR regulations, hereby reconfirms its status as the lead agency for the SEQR review of this action, and be it further resolved that pursuant to Part 617 of the implementing regulations pertaining to Article 8 of the Environmental Conservation Act, the Village Board of the Village of Pleasantville, as lead agency, has carefully considered the whole action and the criteria listed in 6 NYCRR Section 617.7, parent C, including the long-form environmental assessment form, the petition, the amendments, the project, and all materials submitted by the applicant and by the public relating thereto, as well as comments from involved and interested agencies, the village board, village staff, and the public, and hereby find that the proposed unlisted action will not have a significant effect on the environment for the reasons enumerated in the attached negative declaration form.
Is there a second?
Second.
So that is, thank you, Brian, a summary of a nearly 30-page document, which is stated in the record, and which...
Mr. Mayor, before there's any vote, I just want to spread on the record that in addition to this resolution, the board should have before it the Part 2 of the long-form EAF, which must be prepared by the lead agency. And Part 2 is called Project Impacts and Their Magnitudes. Everybody on the board?
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Have that and review that. And there's also, in this particular application, a addendum to Part 2 specifically focusing on visual impacts. Everybody on the board has received that document
Yes.
as well. And then the third document, if the board determines to adopt the negative declaration after voting on the resolution, is the actual negative declaration itself, which has also been prepared by the village's consultant and our office,
Which we
which
also
sets
have.
forth the full rationale for the issuance of the negative declaration.
We have all those documents.
Okay.
And I know some members of the community have asked for them and received them as well. Did we get a second? Okay, so just to be clear, the resolution that is being considered here is not the vote on the zoning amendment. It is instead the step required by the State Environmental Quality Review Act, as you heard in Brian's summary of it, to determine whether or not the project requires a full environmental impact statement. So I know there are comments from the public, and I encourage anyone who has comments about this specific resolution to come up, identify yourself, and let us know your thoughts.
My name is Eileen West. I live at Foxwood. I did get a copy of the negative declaration and of Part 2 of the EAF, and I just wanted to at least take issue with some parts of this document, if I could.
Okay.
And to refer to that document as I go along.
Are you
So-
in the EAF now?
No, I'm on the negative
Okay.
declaration first. Okay, so, and if you want, I can tell you what, I'm on page 14 of the negative declaration,
Okay.
which deals with the impact on growth and character of community or neighborhood.
Okay.
Speak louder. It's too tall for me.
Happy to adjust.
So one of the things that it says in here, it says the village's plan for housing expressly recognizes that there is a need to provide housing resources for Pleasantville's senior population. And it cites the master plan. And the master plan itself does not talk about the need for housing for the senior population. It talks about the need of affordable housing for the senior population. The page that's mentioned here, which is Roman numeral 3, and the following page, Roman numeral 4, all deal with the fact that housing in the village of Pleasantville, or rentals rather, have skyrocketed in terms of amounts, and that there is insufficient affordable housing in the village of Pleasantville. The senior housing cited in the master plan was a subsidized elderly housing project. It was not an assisted living facility that is going to charge $8,000 a month or $7,000 or $9,000, whatever this is going to charge. So I think that that particular reference to the master plan is incomplete in that it doesn't take into account the fact that the emphasis was on affordable housing. The master plan also talks about the character of the village and how important it is for that. And if I could just read like 2 sentences, which is from page Roman numeral 2-1, it says, planning for the village's land use has been an important part of Pleasantville's history. Master plans dating from 1961 have returned repeatedly to a common theme relating to the desired character of the village. That theme is to protect the small village atmosphere that is the essence of Pleasantville. Protecting this character includes preserving attractive single-family neighborhoods and supporting downtown businesses and services. Protecting the character of the village also means maintaining a strong tax and employment base, but at a scale consistent with existing development patterns. And what I would say to the board is that this is not on a scale with the patterns of development in this village, certainly not in this neighborhood. It's a 3-story, 39-foot building that is being placed into a residential neighborhood. No buildings in that neighborhood or anywhere else can be higher than 30 feet or 2.5 stories. This thing is just very, very large. Let me see. There was a reference to somewhere in here, and I'm just looking for it, to a comparison with Foxwood and to the buildings in Foxwood. And the footprint of the buildings in Foxwood, yes, are comparable to what this is going to be. The height of the buildings in Foxwood are not. The height of the buildings in Foxwood are like every other residential building, which is 2.5 feet or 30 stories, not 3 feet and 39 stories. So I wanted to point
Reverse,
out
you mean
that.
3 stories, 39 feet.
30,
Right.
yeah, sorry.
It's big, it's not that
Or
big.
30, maybe it's a Freudian slip. There's references on page 16 of the negative declaration to the Atria Rybrook facility and Belfair, and a considerable amount of time was spent at one of the most recent meetings on that, and saying that the value of the homes in Belfair didn't decline because of Atria. And I think the emphasis that I heard was on the fact that this was an assisted living facility. I don't think the problem, at least to me, is that it's an assisted living facility. I think the problem is that it is 39 feet and 3 stories. The Atria facility at Belfair is very much like the rest of the project there. It was built at the same time. It's not out of scale to that project. And again, I think that that's what the issue is regarding Belfair. Not that it's an assisted living facility.
So, I mean, in part, the text of the declaration is recapping the discussions that were had, and certainly that was discussed in detail.
It certainly was, but
Okay.
it's also being, at least that I can see, being used as a reason to adopt a negative
Mm-hmm.
declaration. So I just wanted
Okay.
to comment on that. And I think on the negative declaration, those are really the only comments I had, but I did have some comments about Part 2 of the EAF.
Okay.
Okay, so this form seems to say that even if a particular impact is not large, that it's a small to moderate impact, that you have to take into account the cumulative effects of all the different impacts within it. So within this EAF, okay, and starting on page 16, impact on aesthetic resources. So it's stated that there'll be a small to moderate impact on aesthetic resources, that the proposed land uses or project components are obviously different from or in sharp contrast to current surrounding land use. That's a yes. That there will be impact on transportation on page 18, alteration of present patterns of movement. That's a,
Okay,
I apologize.
No.
Yeah.
Impact on aesthetic resources, and I don't say this to diminish in any way the concern that all of us have, including us, about the impact on the neighborhood, but when it refers to aesthetic resources, correct me if I'm wrong, Joel, it's referring to public aesthetic resources?
no, well, it's not what it says. I don't know.
It's visual impact on the community
Right.
and on the neighboring property.
Okay,
Okay,
all
so.
right, now you're on to transportation.
All right,
Correct.
and on to transportation, it says that there would be a small to moderate impact on present patterns of movement of people and goods. It says, there's a little note in here, the project is expected to result in a maximum of 32 trips per hour upon completion. So that's added to the school traffic during the 3 p.m. shift that Benchmark intends to implement, and probably the commuter traffic during the 7 a.m. shift that Benchmark intends to implement. I agree that the residents are probably not going to be driving, but the staff certainly is going to be coming and going during these shift changes. So that's an impact. There is, on page 19, impact on growth and character of the community and the neighborhood. There's something that is not checked, but seems to me it ought to be, which says proposed action will conflict with officially adopted plans or goals. And I really do think that it's out of character with the character of the neighborhood and therefore conflicting with the master plan. And there is a change. It says small to moderate impact proposed action will cause a change in the density of land use, and development will create a demand for additional community services. All of these are checked yes as a small to moderate impact. And on the next page, page 20, proposed action will set an important precedent for future projects. Now that's not checked. But if a floating zone is adopted, that means it can apply to another property. And I know somewhere it's saying that it can't apply to another property because of the way the text amendment has been proposed, but if it can't apply to another project, then why do we need a floating zone at all? It's just one parcel that is asking for a rezoning. It's not floating anywhere. And the other one that's checked yes, and well, it should be, is there likely to be public controversy relating to potential adverse environmental impacts? So all of these things taken together cumulatively, I think, should lead to the conclusion that you really need a full environmental impact review and statement.
And if you were recommending that, what information do you think is currently lacking in the voluminous record we have.
I think what's lacking is an adequate consideration of the visual impact of this thing, where it is proposed to be placed.
So when you say that, do you mean further time to discuss and examine what's been already presented, or do you mean that something further should be presented? I mean, part of the issue here,
Well-
obviously, is whether the record the applicant has provided gives us the opportunity to assess all these things.
Or
Right.
whether in the board's opinion, this is going to have a significant adverse impact on the neighborhood. Because what I'm saying is not I don't know how much more information is available, and I certainly agree that the village has looked at the visual impact of this thing, but to me, as somebody who's living in this neighborhood, I think that the visual impact of this thing is really significant, given, again, where it is proposed to be placed. If this were on near the cottage school, that might be a different story. If this were where Ashcroft is, in the heart of the business district, that might be a different story. This is residential. So those are really the comments that I have, and
Okay.
I'm sure there are other people who would like to talk about
Okay,
it.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Other comments?
I get to raise the microphone.
As you wish.
As I must. My name's Bill Stoller. I'm a resident of Maple Hill, or Maple Hill Road as it's sometimes called. And I've been here before, and my comments are pretty much along the lines of what you've heard from me before, in that I speaking for myself, whether this is an assisted living facility or something else is not the question here. When you talk about when we're talking here about the environmental impact of this, that's what we're considering here for your negative, where you're supposed to vote that has no negative impact. And I like to second just about everything that Eileen had to say, and I'm very glad that she read from the master plan. Thank you very much for reading that part of the master plan, which talks about the quality of life in the village and what the master plan says about that. Because that's what's up for consideration here. All the studies that have been done about the traffic, the water flow, everything else like that, looking at those parts of the environmental review, really those are just sort of technicalities. The issues I've said before, I'm repeating myself, the issues as I've said before, that is before the board, is does this type of development, this size of development, does this belong in what has long been a totally residential neighborhood in Pleasantville? You're not putting it in a commercial district, you're not putting it anywhere near a commercial district. Yeah, it's a quarter mile down the road from the old village, but the old village is a couple of gas stations, a few restaurants, nail salons, and that's about it. This is being put in a residential neighborhood, really right up against some single-family homes on more or less 2.5 sides of it, and right across the street from Foxwood, which, as Eileen has described, is much more low density, much lower, much smaller. The buildings are much smaller, even though the footprint of some of the buildings, which are attached, may be like this. On this statement, and by the way, this whole resolution here, I understand that it wasn't written by Mr. Sachs. I know he reviewed it, that this was written by the petitioner's lawyer for you, and that kind of bothers me. It really does.
Well,
and I know that's typically done. I know,
But
Peter,
before
I know
you
it's
leave
typically
the
done.
impression that the fox is guarding the hen house.
Oh, no, you do get to read. No, this is a draft. I understand that, and your staff and you and the board get to review it and to revise it, etc.
I mean, it's perfectly reasonable for us to say to the applicant,
Please write it and we'll
make
review
your
it.
pitch.
Yeah,
And
right.
it's up to us through our due diligence, which I assure you we've exercised,
Right.
to say, where do we agree or disagree. But there's no great honor in disagreeing with the applicant on matters that we agree with.
Right.
And if they're happy to carry the water, great.
The problem I have with it, and I'll get to that a little bit later, is that some of the language repeats things that have already been said, and that members of the community have challenged on, and they're repeated here as if they're matters of fact. But talking about the petition itself, if I can,
Okay.
under one of these many whereases, We're in the whereas of the 1 through however many one Brian read out, all this, that last section there, and it's number 5, whether the action would result in, I'm going to condense this a little, whether the action would result, this is page 9 of the thing, number 5, V, whether the action would result in the impairment of the character or quality of existing community or neighborhood character. I'm just skipping the other part, talking about the historical, archaeological, architectural. Whether the action would result in the impairment or of the character or quality of the existing community or neighborhood character. And I think it's really kind of impossible to say that it won't, because it definitely will. This is a 3-story building. Yeah, it was a 4-story building at one point. They made it smaller, but they left room for it to be made smaller. It's a 3-story building. It takes up a very large piece of land. It there's nothing like it next to it. There's nothing like it in this part of the village. And that is what we have said to you repeatedly. And to say in an environmental impact statement that there's no negative, this is not a negative, this does not somehow impair the character or quality of the existing community or neighborhood's character. To say, it's kind of a double negative here, no it doesn't. I think that's very wrong. I don't see how the board could possibly say that when it's so, it's plain as day that putting something this large next to single-family homes that range from 1,800 to maybe 2,500, 2,600 square feet. That's all they are. There's no McMansions on Maple Hill or that side of Bedford Road. They don't exist. And the buildings at Foxwood, even though, as Eileen said, the footprint of some of them, because they're attached to each other, may look a little large, but when you look at the actual buildings, we all know, you guys know what they look like. They're modest. They're modest, they're low-key, they're 2 stories, and they're divided into smaller apartments. You can't say this is not going to have a negative impact when you talk about this particular area, and that's the area that we who live there are most concerned about. That it is out of place, it is out of character. You would not put this building anywhere else in the village without people jumping up and down and saying, no, this doesn't belong here. And I've said before, I've made some suggestions about other places in the village where if you put something like this, that people would like it. If this was put in place of the Girl Scouts building in the heart of the residential area of Pleasantville, this wouldn't fly. This wouldn't fly on Broadway, heading toward Thornwood, where there are many older houses. This wouldn't fly in a lot of areas. And why does it fly here? Why is there no negative impact, is what you're saying, by putting it in our neighborhood? That's what our complaint is. That's the heart of our complaint. Talking about the money, or talking about the water flow, or talking about ambulance calls or police. That's all secondary. That's all secondary to the main thing. And the main thing is you're putting this large structure. It happens to be an assisted living facility. It could be a nursing home. It could be an office building. It could be a medical building. It could be a lot of different things. But putting a structure of this size, where there's nothing like it, and putting it this close to existing homes. I mean, the parking lot is going to be overlooking one of my neighbor's houses. People get out of their cars and look right down in his house. And on the other side, up on Maple Hill, we're going to look out our backyards, and we're going to see the rooftop of this, and we're going to see the parking lot. Yes, they're going to put up some trees and screens and all of this stuff, but it's going to be there. It's going to be there, and it's going to be very close. There are no other facilities, and Benchmark and its consultants have not been able to provide you in this whole long year, almost year now, well, at least a year, that we've been going through this, have never been able to provide you with another facility that is placed in an existing residential neighborhood this close to existing private family homes. They've talked about Belfair. Belfair, as we know, is very different. They were asked at one point, could they provide some information based on their other properties? They couldn't. Why? They didn't exist. Looked around Westchester at other existing assisted living facilities. Were any of them comparable in terms of where they were located and the effect on private property near them? No, because all those assisted living facilities are not located right butt up against private family homes. they're in a commercial district, they're in a mixed-use district, they're set aside, they're always apart from this. And here, we are being asked to accept a large facility in a totally residential area and say, no, sorry, no impact on the existing neighborhood. And that's just, as I said, on the face of it, you can't say that. That is not true. I'm not against an assisted living. I'm not against development of Pleasantville. I understand that the board faces certain financial I don't want to say problems or issues related to budget, and there'll be money coming in from this that will be helpful to the village and helpful to the school district, but we're not talking about millions of dollars a year. We're talking about a few $100,000 spread between the village and the school district, and a little bit more money for the town and the county in terms of property taxes. And to do this in such a way and put this in such a place that it changes the character of a neighborhood, and in fact, I believe changes the character of the village itself. And as Eileen read to you from the master plan, no. All these previous master plans have referred to the character of the village, the small residential nature of the village. And here, the proposal is to put something not small and not residential in a residential area. And that, I don't see how you can say, you can agree to this part 5 here, by voting in the negative. The negative is essentially a positive by the way you vote. I don't see how you can say that in the face of all that. And as far as what's been written in the statement here that was provided by Mr. Steinmetz's firm, maybe, I don't know if he wrote it himself or somebody else there wrote it, there are a couple of things here, but it repeats some of the things that have been talked about very early on, and really we've tried to discredit, and in fact the Planning Commission, people on the Planning Commission discredited some of this. On page 6 of this, and I've stapled these together, so I'm sorry that I don't know which thing this is. After the petition, this is the, sorry. This is the, whatever this is called, the case thing itself. What is this? What's the name of this thing?
Negative declaration.
The negative declaration. Thank you very much, David. On the negative declaration, on page 6 of the negative declaration, the second paragraph says, while the facility is larger than the adjacent single-family residences to the east and north of the site, blah, blah, blah. This is what Eileen was asking about. A comparable massing of buildings at Foxwood. This is what you were looking for before, I believe, right? And then, as we get to the bottom of it, it says, to the extent that the facility could be viewed through the existing wooded area and vegetation between those uphill properties and the site, as well as the proposed on-site landscape screen, the facility would serve as a transition, quote-unquote, buffer use between the single-family residences to the east, the Foxwoods multifamily development subdivision, and the commercial properties to the west of the site across Bedford Road. This is the same language that is in the original petition, I believe, that was submitted to the board in, was it February, I believe? February of last year. And it's talking about this, how this giant, well, I'm sorry, I'll tone it down. This large, not giant, not gigantic, it's not Godzilla. This large, this large commercial facility is supposed to be somehow a transition up against single-family homes of 2,000, 2,500 square feet at the most, then this thing, then across the road, the modest density of Foxwood, and then past Foxwood, as we get over to Washington, there's a few commercial buildings that are a little bit bigger. And this is somehow supposed to be a transitional buffer.
Subject to argument
but I'm
how
saying
closely related. When you say a few commercial buildings, there are some very big commercial buildings.
But they're
there.
all the way over
Right.
on the other side.
I
It's not
understand.
like
I know
these
where-
are.
right.
It's not like this
Yeah.
building is between those commercial buildings and the single-family homes. This building, this proposal is being put by the single-family homes. It's single-family homes, then this, then Foxwood, then the commercial buildings. And this language about this being a transition buffer use, that was discussed by the Planning Commission. You can look in their notes, and several people on the Planning Commission said, no, you can't say that. That's just not true. And here it is, once again, it rears its ugly head in this document. You know, and I think you can't say that. You can't say that's among the things that if you're going to vote on this, you shouldn't be talking about it. Then on page 14 of this same thing, toward the bottom, I'll let you get to page 14 on your computers there, because I know you don't have paper in front of you. It says, the master plan also seeks revitalization of Pleasantville's old village through, among other efforts, encouraging patronage of the businesses located in this section of the village, as well as the central village district. And then further down, talking about bolstering the local economy through the daytime patronage of the local businesses in those areas, and that somehow, accordingly, the village board has determined, it says in this document, that creating a floating zone creating a floating zone district permitting assisted living residences on those limited sites within the village where such use would be compatible with blah, 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 will foster safe and convenient access to local business and can be developed in an orderly and well-planned manner. Well, we've already heard, this is another example that we've pointed out to you before, of Benchmark and its consultants and its representatives sort of talking out of both sides of their mouth. Because on one hand, they put in a document something like this, and this is also in the petition. And it's been in some cover letters, it's been talked about before, how this is somehow going to be a boost to the economy of the old village and perhaps downtown. And on the other hand, when we talk about traffic impact and impact in other ways, the saying is, well, the average age in this facility is something like 87 or 88 years old. Most of these people don't have cars. Most of them don't drive. And those of us who have ever been in an assisted living facility, you know people are in assisted living because they need help. A lot of them, they can't walk without a walker or a cane or a wheelchair. And it's just inconceivable that the 100 or so residents of this assisted living are going to be rolling their wheelchairs down the access road, down Bedford Road, and having, and hoisting themselves up on a stool at the bar to watch the ball game, or going to the nail salon, or they're going to the convenience store at the 76 gas station. There's no way.
Michael's won't be big enough to handle the demand.
Michael's won't be big enough. I don't know. Michael's has handicap parking for wheelchairs. I have no idea. But I'm saying this is.
Recognize also you have employees and visitors
do have
Not everyone
and
in
associates.
assisted living is in a wheelchair.
No, I didn't say that. But you know that a lot of people in assisted living are they're there for a reason. They're not there.
I get that. But I mean, I think
they're not there because they're free to go and
Bill,
patronize.
in a 30-page document, you're
Yes.
going to find paragraphs you disagree with.
I'm going to find a lot I disagree with. I'm just pointing out a few of them.
But I think it's hard to argue that there isn't a likely positive economic impact from this activity.
Of what type?
You've got a whole bunch of people who are likely to patronize village businesses in the course of their coming and going. So,
I mean the employees?
employees, visitors,
And the
and a
residents.
certain number of
I'll
residents.
stop you right there because Benchmark has said that there are not a lot of visitors. That's one of the things they talk about in their traffic
So
statement.
I'm guessing that, on a holiday, for example, you have visitors who come and take their family member out to lunch or whatever it might be. You can quibble
A
about
couple times a year?
You can quibble about the scale of those benefits, but there clearly are some.
Minor.
Okay, that's your
That's a benefit.
take on it. So.
Minor at most. I mean, just taking
I get it.
taking
I
Grandpa
get it.
out
Okay.
for
Fine.
a
I
beer
get
at Christmas
I got your point.
is not a major
I got your
economic
point.
impact to the village of Pleasantville. Let's be honest about it. Okay? And
You're minimizing the potential other
they're
economic
maximizing it.
impacts.
So
I get that,
So
and that's what
let's call it even. All right.
that's what arguments are
Okay?
about.
We'll do it
Okay.
that way.
All right.
But that's the kind of thing that we've been talking about this. That among the reasons that this shouldn't be here. And I know, and I'm going to get this as right as I can get it, because I know one time I said this and you jumped down my throat for saying it the wrong way.
Okay.
About the financial consideration the board is giving to this. And you have said that the money is not the only consideration for this. The inflow of property taxes to the village is not the only consideration for this, but it is among the ones. I have that right now?
You got that right.
Okay, I'm great. I would like to find out, maybe this may not be the appropriate forum for it because we're only considering this an environmental thing, but at some point I would like to find out what those other things are. what those other positive things are that say that our neighborhood, Maple Hill, Bedford Road, Foxwood, should be altered for the conceivable future, 25, 30 years, whatever it's going to be, however long this facility is going to be there and be used.
So, I mean, as you rightly point out, this isn't probably the right forum.
No, this is not for the.
This is not a vote on whether your neighborhood should be altered or not. This
We
is a
started
vote
talking
on
about
the secret.
economics. That's what I
Understand.
started to say. But you know, if the petition talks about the positive economic impact it's going to have, which I think is minimal, my neighbors think is minimal, we would like to hear about the real positive aspects at some point of doing this beyond a modest property tax boost from the facility of this kind, because in this area, as you consider the environmental impact, you're saying it won't have a negative impact on the area. And, well, if it won't have a negative impact on the area, environmentally speaking, you're obviously thinking somewhere, even though it's not up for a consideration in this resolution, about the positive impact it would have on the village, even though that's not what's under consideration right before you right now. But that's why I'm bringing that point, because the petition does talk about it.
We're happy to have that conversation, and that obviously goes to the core of the question of
Right.
the vote on the future vote on the zoning amendment, and
But you do
worth
understand
discussion.
that those of us who live in the area feel that every step of the way here, the train seems to be on the track, and it just keeps moving in a certain direction, and we don't see it being slowed down or stopped.
I mean, I understand why you would say that. I respect your comment, but I think I've said before, but let me say again,
Please.
that our goal in this venture is that whatever decision is made is a decision that both sides understand. They may not agree with it, but whoever wins and loses, we have the goal and to the extent that we can fulfill it, the responsibility that everybody gets it. I didn't want that to happen, but it did, or I didn't want that to I did want it to happen and it didn't. We've spent a year. You say that train hasn't slowed down. I think the train has been pretty careful.
It hasn't been running express.
And
No, it hasn't.
deliberative.
It hasn't.
But another piece of it, and I've said this before, and I hope you wouldn't disagree with me, is that it doesn't benefit anybody, least of all of us as residents of Pleasantville, if complicated discussions are slowed down unnecessarily.
No.
So what we're trying to do is move this along as expeditiously as we can out of fairness to everybody so that we get to a yes or a no as quickly as is consistent with being responsible, and that's what we're trying to do. So,
Okay. But as I said, I came up here to try to talk about it from the point of view of the
Understood.
of the environmental impact, and the environmental impact to me and to many of my neighbors. I don't plan to speak for them, those that are here, those that are not here, but when we've talked about it among ourselves, we always talk about this is going to be just so out of character, so out of place where it is, and that is an environmental impact.
I certainly
that
understand
can't
that.
be-
I just want to throw another sort of slightly random comment here, and I don't seek a response at the moment, but one of the interesting questions about patterns of development in a tight village like ours is that it's very hard to put any significant anything anywhere, a big home, a church, a education facility, or whatever, into a community without significant impacts. And some of the discussions we've been through are echoed in discussions over the last 15 years about the expansion that's gone on at the 3 school district facilities in recent years, all of which are tightly bounded by residential neighborhoods. And to the extent that that reflects a pattern of development, it's worth thinking about.
Well, the other thing I would say is that there are some places, some municipalities, villages, whatever you want to call them, that by their size, by their shape, by their location, by how they were laid out, are more conducive to certain kinds of development than others. And it would be my feeling, maybe not you disagree with me, but it would be my feeling that the village of Pleasantville is not a place that's going to be I don't want to say conducive. The Village of Pleasantville is not the type of municipality where there can be a lot of commercial development. Even though commercial development would benefit the tax base, it is simply the size, the shape, and the way the village has grown up for the last 300 and some odd years.
Right. No, I understand.
That it's not the same kind of a place as a Mount Kisco.
Certainly
the
not.
sort of place as a Tarrytown, or not a place as an Elmsford, or...
I completely agree,
it's-
but I mean, in some respects, those are constraints we have to live with.
Right.
In some respects, those are constraints we have to be imaginative about. And in some respects, it's just interesting to look over the historical periods about how multiple uses existed in such close proximity. So,
Well,
a discussion for another day.
There used to be shoe factories, but that's another era.
Just you wait, someone will come forward.
Oh, no.
You brought it up.
I will regret it if I encouraged it in any way
All
whatsoever.
right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Oh,
I'll have to change the tape after this.
Okay.
I just feel Shane McGaffey, 85 Nanahagan Road. And I'm not speaking in favor or against this particular proposal. I feel like I'm missing something here, so I just want to clarify to make sure I'm getting it right. What you're voting on today is a resolution basically on SECRA. You're not deciding today if there's an impact or there isn't an impact, whether there's a significant environmental impact or not. You're voting on...
No, we are.
Oh, you are today?
Yes.
Okay, so you're not just voting on whether or not they need to give you more information. That's what I just wanted to make sure.
I mean, that's a component of it, but, you know, the SECRA analysis reviews the impacts
Right.
and gives the applicant an opportunity to show how they can be mitigated so that the net result is X or Y or Z.
So what are the ramifications of today's vote then?
If we are to approve the negative declaration,
Right.
then the applicant does not have to go through an environmental impact statement.
Right.
Although, as we have said before, in many respects, the material we have before us is, correct me if you disagree,
No, I agree. It basically means that the Village Board of Trustees
Mm-hmm.
and really the Planning Commission has all the environmental information it needs
To make a decision.
in order to intelligently review the proposed zoning amendment and determine whether to approve a zoning amendment and a subsequent proceeding, and if it is approved, whether the planning board later on has enough information to approve a site plan.
Right, so what I'm trying to say is, and forgive me if I'm misunderstanding, that what you're approving today or not approving, voting on today, is that the information is there for you to make a decision, not necessarily whether you think this is the right project, whether it's the wrong project, whether there's too much of it.
certainly that
You're
piece of it is
specifically
yet
just
to be
voting on,
determined.
Right.
do we need more information from these guys or not?
We are saying, as part of the resolution,
Okay,
that it will not have a significant effect on the environment for the reasons enumerated.
okay.
based on the
So-
analysis and the mitigation that
Right.
has been presented.
Right,
Okay.
but
In the-
that doesn't bind the village to approve the project.
Okay,
Right.
Nor would it be intellectually or philosophically inconsistent to vote on a negative declaration in the affirmative, and then later on, an individual voter vote against the zoning change,
okay,
but for different reasons.
okay. All right, thanks, I just wanted to clarify,
Okay,
because I
thank you.
just want to make sure we're all on the same page.
You need to change the tape.
So,
A really quick question.
Well-
Okay.
Just a quick question.
In terms of
And I failed to ask this. I meant to ask it, I failed to ask this. Is there going to be an actual vote tonight?
we have it on the resolutions. The resolution has been placed on the table. The motion has been made and seconded. We could vote to table it or vote on it. Those are our options.
And what will determine whether you table it or vote on
I
it?
mean, we'll decide that at the end of this commentary, and if anything comes up that would cause us to table it, any of us is welcome to propose that.
Okay.
Need to change the tape, Shane? I do. Okay, brief break while we change the tape. Welcome back. We had a brief break to change the tape. Yuri?
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Board, my name is Yuri Paras, check from 45 Maple Hill. I continue to beat the drum that says the financial benefit to this village is less than 0.5% to the village itself and less than 0.5% to the school. Number one. Number two, the whole point here is about the environmental impact on us, the neighbours. One question that hasn't been really answered to my satisfaction was raised by Mr. Sachs some time ago. He asked, what's going to happen to the retaining wall on Pleasantville Road? My question is, I'm not so worried about that, although that's an issue. I'm worried about the hydrological field that's going to be completely disturbed by the earth that's going to be moved and the distribution of land pressures throughout the neighborhood. What's going to happen to our homes? Who is going to do a study there? I don't believe that study's been done, has it?
Well, we have, are you suggesting that the work the applicant is going to do is going to disturb your property and cause...
Yes, let me explain why.
Yeah.
In a field like that, the way that water permeates is determined by the permeability of the ground. What they're doing is moving a large amount of ground and letting all that drop down into a retention basin. When that happens, flows change, pressures change. We're on a slope. That slope drives a gradient of water pressure across that land. What's going to happen to our homes? Who's going to do a survey before and after? And what's going to happen if we get disturbances? Who's going to pay for it?
What disturbances are you imagining?
I'm worried about subsidence. I'm worried about ground movement. That's number one.
Okay.
Number two, I point out another thing, which is that over a period of time when we keep coming back and saying, for us, the neighbours, it's a big issue. It's a big environmental impact. I feel like I'm hitting my head against the wall for a number of reasons. First of all, the applicant comes here with several $100 million company behind them, and we're a bunch of neighbours living on an average of about $100,000 each in that neighbourhood. And they're providing all the verbiage for this, and the village is saying, we'll read it and we'll sort of approve it and it makes sense. But I don't feel like there's anybody except for the planning board who's really picking through this. Why did the village not put together this assessment, put a more detailed assessment? Why are we doing the assessment here?
I think there's an extremely detailed assessment. Have you looked at the...
Yes, I have,
Okay.
but it wasn't done by the village.
A lot of it was done.
No,
by the- so-
most of it was not, Mr. Mayor. You know that.
Yuri, you and I have spent quite a long time talking,
Yeah.
as you well know.
Well, no, but not about this, Mr. Mayor.
But I can assure you that a tremendous amount of attention has been applied to this, both among the elected representatives on this board and also our staff as well as our paid consultants.
Let me explain how I feel about
I
that.
understand how you feel, but
Yeah.
to suggest that the applicant is the only person who's awake in this process is a little bit of an overstatement.
Might be, but let me explain a couple of things.
It may be insulting.
Yeah.
So,
Not my intent to insult Mr. Skarstad. My intent is to provide clarity.
I'm just letting you know from this side of the table
Okay.
that it's vaguely insulting.
Thank you, Mr. Skarstad. I take
You're
that.
welcome.
So a couple of things why I find some things insulting. Our neighbours come up here and they make some points. And we get points here that are aristicism. For example, the people say, well, it might be this, it might be that. Well, what is it?
What specifically are you referring to?
For example, this evening we had some questions. What was it, Bill? You brought up some questions about the quality of life. And somebody says, well, it might be this, it might be that. Where are the facts that substantiate these opinions? The facts about for example, you've talked about, well, I think it's going to bring in revenue for the village. And we say we don't think it is. Well, how is that going to be substantiated?
Well, that isn't actually a matter under discussion as part of the secret thing.
Actually, it is.
But
You know why?
as you well know, there's an economic impact study that was presented by the applicant, and I can tell you, having been in this role both as mayor and trustee for a good long while, and also spending an awful lot of time in the context of the village commercial base with my own day job office here, that all of our economic interests are very much intertwined. That's something that's on all of our minds. The addition of people working at a facility like that has a positive effect on the economy. Is that the biggest thing on the radar screen? Certainly not.
Well, I look at the other effects that we've tried to have on the economy. this facility over here that's still under some process of adjudication. As to
What?
This facility, Henkel's facility.
There's no adjudication, they're building it.
Yeah, they're building it, but then no taxes coming in. It's in the Certiorari, right?
You're completely mistaken.
So can you
They're
tell me-
paying taxes just as
No,
that property's been
Mr.
paying
Mayor,
taxes, for the last
time I
15
came
years.
In,
Right.
The last time I came in, Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
you told me it was under Certiorari.
Stop and Shop, the previous owner of that property, filed a tax cert for the years, I forget exactly, I think the last 3 years of their ownership. That continues to be under discussion. Henkel has not filed a tax cert. They are building a new warehouse and office facility there that is, without question, a net win for the village
And
relative to the other options.
How much income are we getting from that, Mr. Mayor?
There's a discussion for another time. I'm happy
No,
to have
Mr.
that
Mayor,
conversation
it's not.
with you.
You're engaging me in this, and I'm asking you
And
the
perhaps-
question. This is all about the
Yuri,
quality
I'm
of life in the
engaging-
village, Mr. Mayor.
I'm engaging you because I really, really, really want you to understand that we would like to get to the fairest, most reasonable answer we can get about this project.
So,
I'm not here to talk about MLA, although you've encouraged me to do so, and I've done so on a few occasions. But I get it.
still
I
haven't got
understand
the
your
numbers.
point. And exactly what does that have to do with the benchmark project?
Because the whole point about putting, as you and Mr. Skarstad said,
Yes.
we need revenue and we need bones in this village. Your point was about bones is to do with the quality of life. That is the infrastructure and the skeleton of this village that makes it important for people to have quality in this life.
Okay.
We're all trying to improve the quality of life in this village. And that's what the secret is about, right? So quality of life comes from many different components. It comes from revenue, it comes from ease of access, it comes of views, it comes from peace, it comes from many components. And so I'm making the point that, let's look at these components. What's happening with revenue in this village? Where's all the money going in this village? And why are we spending so much? And that's forcing us to make decisions that change the quality of life in this village. That's my point, Mr. Mayor.
So we're about to enter the budget process. If you think we're spending too much money or spending money on the wrong things, I invite you to that forum, which is the place to talk about it.
Well, it's about the quality of life and secret again, isn't it? That's what I'm trying to get at here. I'm trying to get at the point that for everybody who lives in this village, they need certain access to certain quality of life parameters. And what we're doing here is we're forcing certain entities into here because, not because they're going to improve the quality of life, but because they're going to improve the property to generate revenue.
So
And it's not improving our quality of life, Mr. Mayor. That's my problem.
I understand
But
that.
why is it- why is
Can I
it-
respectfully suggest that that's a discussion to be had in the context of the zoning change, not in this context?
Do you all agree with that? Yes. Thank you.
Good evening, Monica Strobel, 66 Maple Hill. Uri does have a valid concern when it comes to the issue of water hydraulics. And it's, you should not forego the environmental impact. I can tell you that in the 35 years John and I have been living at our address, we have been flooded, I would say now 4 times in 35 years. I know the Sauls have been flooded, the Polars have been flooded, and the Huttons have been flooded. Now, I know
You're all uphill of this project, right?
yes, we're
Okay,
uphill.
right.
Yes, we're uphill. We overlook. I think when we first started, it was 28,000 square feet. Now it's approximately 33,000 square feet. We're uphill. We have our neighbors downhill. And Benchmark will be downhill as well. Foxwood is below them. So I know Andrew lives on Summit Place, sorry. Why? The topography over the years has changed. There isn't an answer. I know they don't have storm drains up there. When you're changing the land, it becomes unpredictable. So I really think that you need to take a long, hard look at what the impact will be to the people who live adjacent to the proposed site, the people who live below, including 117, which hopefully won't become like the sawmill at some point. But it's a valid concern. Why, why do we have water? It's not running into my home down the hill. It's coming up from underneath. So I think it's a mistake to forego the environmental impact. You don't know what impact the neighbors will incur once the land's disturbed. I think you need to do some more research into that because it's a valid concern.
But just on that point, for the record, we have a stormwater and pollution plan that has been supplied by the applicant, and it has been vetted by BFJ Planning and their subconsultant on our side of the table, Hudson Engineering. So I just didn't want to leave people who are watching with the thought that those issues hadn't been looked at. And those documents are on the web at pleasantville-ny.gov.
What else did I want to say? Oh, I just need to make a comment about the buffer. It really is insulting to those of us who live on the top of the hill, because once you clear cut that parcel, you put a building in there, you can put a screening fence, you can put a couple of trees, 10-footers, whatever. Not only will we see, the footprint of that property, but we're going to now really get a good look at 117 and a good look. I see the tennis courts in the winter anyway, but now we're going to get a good look at 117 and Foxwood. I'm going to see farther than I ever wanted to see, because once you clear that, you can't get those trees back. You can put a fence, and it'll help maybe some of the people on the bottom of the hill, but it's not going to help us at the top of the hill. And I know I've said it over and over again, but it bears repeating. My quality of life and what I see when I look out of the window will be forever changed. Forever. It doesn't matter if you make it a story. I'm still going to see a 33,000 square foot footprint and the hardscapes all around it, including a parking lot and cars. So, don't tell me it's a buffer, because there's no way it's going to be a buffer. It should not be considered transitional at all. It's insulting, it really is. I'm sorry. I also want to point something else out. I think maybe I'm tired, not quite sure, maybe just tired of it, period. But if you look at page 6.
Of which document?
The one that comes after F, impact on the aesthetics resources. On the second to last paragraph, you say the village board has weighed the detail and accuracy of all these visual assessments, and in consultation with the village's professional planning consultants and staff, has determined that the project would not result in any significant adverse impact upon views from neighboring properties. And then when you go to page 7, top paragraph, it says, since the facility is designed to provide residences for senior citizens and the lighting, outdoor use, and traffic at the site would generally coincide with typical residential hours, the village board has determined that the facility would represent a significant adverse visual or aesthetic impact upon the surrounding neighbors or the community as a whole. So, I'm not sure, is that a contradiction to you?
That's the old version before the typo was correct.
Yeah.
There was a revised version.
Revised version, so you're correct.
Right.
What you.
You're
Okay,
correct.
so I don't have
Yeah.
the revised version.
Right.
Right. It says not, would not.
Would not.
Okay. So I don't have the revised version. Okay. I think that's all I wanted to say. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey.
Andrew Layton, 44 Summit. Just a few things from the environmental standpoint. We've talked about groundwater. I'm also just concerned about the excavation and what it does to the stability of that land. As you mentioned, we're all up on hills. I'm a particularly large hill directly up from the facility. They're going to be blasting, they're going to be excavating a lot. I'm a little bit worried about what's going to happen to the foundation of my house as they change that entire landscape. And I'm not sure what kind of study's been done in terms of density of rock and stability of that land around that area.
Well, there are geotechnical studies. Again, they're on the web. They have done borings. They are aware of the rock, the areas they would have to remove. They've proposed, as it describes here, blasting instead of chipping, just because it's faster and avoids an extended period of banging away at rock. I think very clearly there are a lot of guidelines that control that kind of work, and there's a detailed geotechnical study. So, I mean, you're quite a bit, you're up on Summit.
I'm up on Summit, but
I think
I directly overlook the facility, and that'll get
Right.
into some of my other environmental issues, but I am going to be directly overlooking the facility. I'm not right next to it as my neighbors in Maple Hill are, but
Right.
I am one of the highest points from that facility. So I am very worried about changing of the land, and is there going to be any sort of collapse, any sort of sinkage, anything along those lines that could affect my foundation and stability of my house. I've seen a number of places. We've seen a number of places, not in here, not around, but I've seen news reports of sinkholes and changes.
There, as I said in reference to Monica's comments, we've got a geotechnical study as well as stormwater study produced by the applicant, vetted by our planning firm and their hired engineering consultants. So obviously, if this project is to go forward, there are all kinds of permits attached to this sort of work. It would be hard to imagine that, first off, obviously, it's not in the economic interest of the applicant to cause a collapse of anything, but a collapse that would cause the whole hillside to go, I don't think is a reasonable fear. So I think you're okay on that.
Okay. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk about the visual impact. We've talked about this before, about inviting the board up to see now that the leaves are down off the tree and to see. And
Which we have done.
I would like to invite the board to visit my house, in particular, see what the view would be from my level. If you look from ground level versus the level of my house, I can tell you, looking out my kitchen window, looking out, I have a screened-in porch in the back. I can, as my neighbors have mentioned, I can see down to 117 in the winter. I can barely see foxwoods through the trees. Clear cutting all those trees, I suddenly have a much greater view of what's going to be a parking lot, essentially. So there is a definite visual impact.
I understand that, but recognize also, I mean, the church could have cut down the trees anytime they wanted, and indeed at one point proposed to do so.
I think removal of trees requires replacement of trees elsewhere. I thought there was something in the village that said if you remove vegetation, you need to.
It's sort of a guideline that the planning commission sometimes follows in site plan review. But any of us, you included, can cut a tree down on your private property and there's no control over that in the village.
Okay.
Some people think that that's bad, that that's the way it is.
So, I mean, you probably know this property, the one that's under discussion now, owned by the Methodist Church, has been the subject of development discussion for probably 25 years. So there have been a lot of different ideas about it, but this is the one before us now.
Okay. And then specifically going into Appendix F, on page 13, regarding the noise and odor impact. Right there at the first line, they talk about temporary minor noise impacts associated with the construction of the proposed project. What I don't see is any reference to the noise, odor, and even light impact of the continued operation of a facility of that density. It's going to be running a 24-hour kitchen facility. It's going to generate a significant amount of odor. They're going to be running a laundry facility suitable for laundry for 85 units. Again, in residential, it's going to produce a significant amount of odor pollution, as it were. Light pollution from the parking lot. Even if they say, as a residential facility, the average light usage is going to be consistent with residential, the parking lot is most likely not going to be a residential parking lot. It's going to be lit 24 hours a day. So there's significant light pollution into that area. Noise pollution, there, I would assume, and I'm going to maybe making an assumption, that there'll be some sort of a generator facility on site, as well as cooling towers to provide environmental control and
I mean,
protection.
there is a generator, that would be an emergency generator, used only when power is out. So,
Well, along with testing.
right,
So, but again, these are all things that I don't see. These are all things.
right. Testing 15 minutes or something like that.
These are all things I don't see referenced in the noise and odor impact. I see it's all
Look,
referenced specifically around the construction, not around the continued operation.
The secret document is not an effort to capture absolutely everything that could be examined, and indeed, if the zoning change were to be approved and the project went to the Planning Commission for site plan review, those are all matters that would be subject to very detailed review. But certainly, it's important to have those all on the table, and you guys have brought them forth, as have our consultants, and we're certainly sensitive to all those issues.
Has there been enough information given regarding some of those continuing operation pollution items? That's why I don't see any reference to that in here. When you talk about do we need more information, I don't see any information regarding that. In
We
this
have a pretty
determination.
detailed operational plan from the applicant about who comes and goes when and what the hours of operation are and all that.
And what the impact, what the pollution impact will be from that in terms of the laundry facilities, the cooking facilities, trash, additional trash generated, what sort of environmental impacts will be generated from that of a facility of this density with this low, with this short of a boundary between that and other residential facilities. That's the additional information I think might be useful to have, determine if there's going to be an environmental impact above and beyond the visual impact that's already been discussed.
Okay.
That's all I'd like to.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Anybody else?
Just have one thing to say, Sean. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Board. My name is John Strobel, 66 Maple Hill. While I agree with all of my neighbors, I'm not going to repeat everything what they said. There's only one question I have, which goes way back to the first meeting we had in the Methodist Church when Mr. Cook was there with his colleagues. And the first presentation they get is Pleasantville needs this. We did a study, the Pleasantville residents need a place for their seniors to live. Now and then I asked Mr. Cook, he said about 4,000 it would be per person per month, and then it escalated to almost 8,000, as we heard from Irene. And I haven't heard anybody did a study to see which Pleasantville seniors need this. I don't know, has anyone did a survey, went door to door, asked the seniors, will you be willing to live there? Do you need this? If you have done it, I'd be interested in the
I didn't
results.
do an official survey with statistics, but I do have lunch down at the senior center, where there is probably the largest grouping of senior citizens, and they are all very much, we're all very much in favor of this type of facility.
Are they aware of the cost? That it's $96,000
I can't say that
a year?
every one of them was, but, in some of the conversations, yes, some of them were, and,
Because most of the people I speak to that say it's $96,000 a year per person, almost $200,000 a year per couple, just laugh and say,
Well,
this is
and-
not for me.
and down at the senior center, just to be specific, there are some folks who go to the senior center that are residents of that building, and that's not necessarily the only group that is down there. So perhaps the folks that live there wouldn't be eligible to be in that facility, but there are others. So
Well,
it's not that everyone's saying, no, we would never live there.
I mean, at this level, for the purposes of the secret discussion, I think the important piece about that is that we have very clear demographics, both nationally but specific to Westchester County, about the substantial growth in the elderly population in Westchester County and the likely continued substantial growth. So, certainly as a matter of philosophical goals, my personal opinion is I would like to maintain a maximally intergenerational community to the extent that we can. Therefore, I think the need for facilities of this kind is clear and compelling. That doesn't go to your question of, can it be somewhere else? But I do think that the need for these facilities is very clear. Further, I think it's obviously that is empirically clear. It is ratified by the idea that entities like Benchmark and Atria and their competitors are seeking to invest this kind of money in projects like this and others around Westchester and in the region, are responding to that very same demand.
But then getting back to the study about Westchester County, we can't find another place that built a facility in a similar situation as Pleasantville.
Right, different question.
That is a different
Right.
question. And there are other facilities that are being built and currently opening. So my question still is to address the need in Pleasantville. And the need affects the environmental study also, because we can build something else there. As it was zoned for private homes, we can build that there. There might be a need for that too. That's all I have to say.
Understood. Any further comment?
I have just one.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No problem.
It occurred to me as I was coming home late this afternoon, and I pulled into Maple Hill. You know, they had been storing the modulars there, and they were moved out. But what I noticed, could you speak about on page? Well, I had my finger on it. The trucks. You speak about the radii or making
The radii of the truck, yeah, the
radii
turning
of the truck.
radius.
Yes, off of 117. And the only thing, you know, I thought about when I pulled in, I noticed because they had the flatbed, I guess, to move the equipment out today, that they made that turn into the church parking lot, and they didn't do a very good job. They ended up on the grass, on the dirt. You know, I don't know what the dimensions are.
Right. Well, again, I mean, a comment is made in this about the discussion
know.
about the turn radio. That primarily is an issue about traffic and safety. Obviously would get vetted even further in the context of a potential site plan review. But I will say that the applicant's data vetted then by BFJ Planning and their civil engineering consultants ratify that the width of the roadway is suitable. And, I mean, you probably heard the discussion, a fire truck coming down would encroach over the line in those rare occasions, but that the typical truck coming and going can stay within its own lane on the driveway.
Well, I think too, because I saw exactly what you saw,
right.
is to the point that if the cars were all coming in and off of Maple Hill, it really would be an issue.
It would be an issue.
So the cutout off of 117, you know, that the state has said that they're going to approve is a must, you know, is a must-have.
Right.
Because I watched a similar
You
show
watched the same
this
truck.
afternoon.
I didn't see the show, but I
Yeah,
saw
yeah.
the remnants of,
Yeah, they
what
needed a
occurred.
leader, probably more than anything.
I just wanted
Yeah.
to bring that
No,
Thank you.
no, it was, but I think to the point that, you know, I think initially when they were saying that access would be in through Maple Hill, it would be really awful. So this 117 cutout is very important to the success of being able to turn you.
All right.
Thank you. Any further comment by board members? All right, so let's proceed to a roll call vote. Colleen?
Aye.
Jonathan?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. The resolution passes.
We have to
Colleen?
14.
Yes.
Resolved that the polling place for the March 18th, 2014 village election shall be located at Village Hall, 80 Wheeler Avenue, Pleasantville, New York, and the hours of said election shall be from 12 p.m. to 9 p.m.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hold on one second. Resolved that the Board of Trustees, upon the recommendation of the police chief, hereby approves the appointment of Morgan Dillon to the position of detective effective January 13, 2014 at a salary of $108,855.
Is there a second?
Second.
Congratulations to Morgan Dillon. She has arrived on our force and done a great job, and we are happy to endorse her
As youth.
petition, her promotion to detective and to the role of our village youth officer. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. Number 6.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the request from the village administrator to attend a leadership conference from March 9th through March 12th in San Francisco, California, at no cost to the village.
It's my kind of
Is there a second?
I object.
Exactly. You
object.
You can go to as many of those as you want.
You know, I'm on the Board of Governors for NYMIR,
Yeah.
and it's a continuing education issue for them, and there's about 8 of us going from the board.
That's great.
Enjoy that. I mean, they sent us the
Oh, they do.
agenda, so it sounds chock full of good stuff.
Further, it's further evidence of the kind of job Patty does for us and our good fortune in having someone of her stature serving the village in the role of administrator. Her skills and capacity encouraged the NYMIR, our insurance reciprocal, to add her to the board, and happy to see you go to San Francisco at their expense. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. Number 7.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the village attorney to proceed with the settlement of certiorari petitioned by Ledgerock Gardens follows. From the year 2009, assessment $904,100 to revised assessment of $666,600, reduction of $237,500 for a refund of $17,932.06. Should I read the whole thing?
No, you can just...
All right, these are from tax year assessments 2009, 10, 11, 12, and 13. The reductions total a refund of $86,184.28.
Is there a
Further resolved that the
Oh,
village
sorry.
treasurer is authorized to issue the applicable refunds in the amount of $86,184.28 to the petitioner's attorney upon receipt of an executed order from the court.
Is there a second?
Second.
So this is a negotiation that has been undertaken between the attorneys for Ledgerock Gardens and Keenan Bean, our tax cert attorneys. Just for people to be aware, co-ops and condominiums are favorably treated under the New York State tax law. They are not taxed based on the actual market value of the units, instead taxed based on the hypothetical value of the complex were it to be sold as an investment property by an owner who would rent it. So the results of that are that, as a general rule, co-ops and condominiums pay substantially, in many cases, dramatically less money in taxes at an equivalent property value as compared to a single-family homeowner. That's a subject that is a source of lots of discussion. Not an easy matter to grapple with, and at the moment, the law is what the law is in New York State. And we have a detailed memo from our attorney regarding the negotiation in this case that would refund to Ledgerock $86,184.28.
I just want to say, I think there's such a misnomer out there about tax certioraries that when we have to issue a refund, that somehow the tax revenue base goes down. It doesn't. We still have that amount. We just got to make it up somewhere else. So when people say, that we're bringing in businesses and maybe it's only 0.5% or 1%, well, this just went down by that much. So these certioraries hurt us all. They hurt us all.
I mean, I probably led the discussion on the outrageousness of
Yeah.
this law. I always chime in on these certioraries. I mean, there may be some economic argument to the condo and co-op complexes having a mild discount relative to the value of their units to the value of a freestanding residential home. We could argue whether that should be 10 or 15 or 20%. It is now approaching 50%, 70%. As a single-family homeowner, paying twice, 2.5 times the taxes per value of my house as a condo or co-op owner, and they receive virtually the same if not almost exactly the same services as everybody else in the village does. I think it's outrageous. It's not the condo and co-op's fault. They're following the law. It is the dysfunctionality in the system is so widespread that it's almost conspiratorial at the top. You can't fight these in the courts because the courts plead ignorance. They show a willingness to perpetuate a mistake as opposed to correct and stand up and provide justice. The legislators don't want to do anything because condo owners can vote as a block. And meanwhile, in essence, what's now become or now happening is single-family homeowners in the state of New York are subsidizing condo owners to the point where, quite honestly, I feel that the value of their property is increasing, and the value of our properties are decreasing because of the disproportionate burden of taxes. I fight this every time it comes up. I write long letters, and I challenge our tax consultants, and the answer always comes back: you won't win. The cost of the village will be too high, and that basically the system's broken and rigged against you. And I'm more candid to say it, and I believe it, because God knows, we've tried to take very economic, very sensible approaches to challenging these, and the courts don't want to hear it. They just don't want to hear it. And I guess the only thing that's going to happen is at some point, Washington. I wish it was just Washington, but that Albany's going to hear it from all the single-family homeowners. It's going to become so disproportional and so not fair that the single-family homeowners will wake up and realize that this has just gotten way out of hand, and that it's not just. And I think it's way past that right now. And all I can do is, I can't fight it. I can't put your tax money at risk taking it to court with something we're going to lose.
And pay a penalty on it.
And pay a penalty.
Right.
We get to pay interest. If we take it to court, we get to pay interest to the parties for the years that they're aggrieved. The interest isn't what we receive in our savings account, which is 0 to 25 basis points or 0.25%. It's 3%. Well through our borrowing costs, the village's borrowing costs. So there's every disincentive not to do this. All I can do is encourage people to get educated on this, and as part of the many reasons to write your legislature and your governor, this is certainly one of them. And, pursuant to, if anybody stayed through the conversations that we had, this is one small reason, but a reason that, the village is forced to try to continue to progress and grow and get creative in terms of tax receipts and ways to keep taxes in the village at a level where we're not forcing, a vast change in the texture and the composite of the community. So that's my my one gripe, which I always have and take the chance to make when these certioraries come up.
There you have it.
And that's true.
It's all true.
We know
it's
that.
all true.
Now I know that
devil's
Jonathan
bargain.
is our resident expert on all this. That's absolutely
On
correct.
griping? Yes.
Well,
I am good at that too, no doubt.
It's a principled argument.
It is. I agree with
we're
it
confronted-
100%.
Absolutely.
And it isn't the fault of co-op and condo owners.
Nope.
But the law has created an extremely problematic circumstance. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. Who's next?
Jonathan.
Brian.
John, right? 8, approval of budget.
Right.
No, hold on.
Yes, I read the
Correct.
certiorari.
Jonathan,
Yeah.
number 8. Right.
Number 8.
I'm getting there.
It's down, it's way down.
As we scroll through our screens. We're saving paper.
We're saving money.
At this point, we've been here so long. I'm surprised my battery is.
I know I'm down to 16%.
All right, here we go.
There you go.
You're
Excuse
upside
me.
down there.
I'm up.
Here, would you like to take advantage of my screen there?
Now my thing's going continually. Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the following budget amendments. We're going to be moving $40,227 from various budget codes, such as transfers to Capital Music Festival, to other budget items where they're more appropriate, such as police auto equipment, and in different types of breakdowns for the music festival. We're also going to be transferring $5,156 from the music festival to from a revenue item in the music festival to an expense item. Good lesson for anybody that's trying to remember their old accounting courses. And we're also moving $5,641 again from various line items to other line items involving the music festival.
Second.
Thank you.
Comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. Number 9, Brian.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the proposal from Westchester Fences dated October 10th, 2013 for replacement of a chain link fence at the water tank at a cost not to exceed $28,000.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have several bids. Westchester Fence is the winning bid. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. Number 10.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the mayor to sign the authorization letter advising of the Village of Pleasantville's intent to participate in the Westchester County Hazard Mitigation Plan update.
Is there a second?
Second.
That will allow us to take advantage of the county's shared services.
And to FEMA funding.
Right.
That may come down the road.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Here, I'll read you the letter here. Just the summary paragraph. Your municipality invited to participate in the update of the Westchester County Hazard Mitigation Plan. Per federal regulation, all local governments must have FEMA-approved hazard mitigation plan in order to be eligible for federal mitigation grant funding for public and private mitigation projects. Plans have to be formally updated in a 5-year cycle. A number of municipalities have local HMPs at various points in their 5-year cycle. The county's been awarded a grant to update the county plan as a full multi-jurisdictional HMP to include all municipalities. So we're joining in that venture.
Well, the county's
The
funding.
county is funding it. Doesn't cost us anything, but in order to preserve our right to get FEMA funding, we need to be a part of it or have our own. Accurately stated?
That's correct.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. Number 11.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the village administrator to sign the agreement with the USA-MDT for annual drug and alcohol testing as per the terms set forth in their agreement dated January 10th, 2014.
Is there a second?
Second.
So this is the routine, contractually required and regulatory requirements for drug and alcohol testing of...
For anybody who holds a commercial driver's license for the Village of Pleasantville, they're required to be randomly tested for drugs and alcohol. And we have had a relationship with a company called Clarity Testing. We are now moving on to a new company called USA-MDT. For a few administrative reasons, we think this is a better fit for us at the same cost and expense that we were incurring all along. So we're required by law to host this program. We have a third-party provider that comes on site and does sample collections randomly.
Roughly how many people is that?
We have a pool of 18, and I believe we have quarterly testing requirements that capture a number of those individuals for sampling.
Okay.
We have 18 people with CDL licenses.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. That was the last matter on our regular agenda. Any further new business?
Want to mention the election?
Yes, thank you for that, Colleen. There's a village election coming up that takes place on March 18th. You may have heard the resolution about the polling place, which is here, Village Hall. There are 2 trustee positions that will be voted upon, and anyone who's interested in running needs to file the required petitions with the required number of signatures with the village clerk, Judy Weintraub, here at Village Hall, and those are due by February 11.
There's info on the website.
So we have some information on our website, correct, Patty
Yes,
and
we do.
Judy, at pleasantville-ny.gov. That's probably a good starting point, and we also have links to the county and state board of elections sites that fill you in on the details. So we encourage anyone who might be interested in serving on the village board to take a look at that and give consideration to whether they're interested in running. Again, 2 trustee positions will be up for vote on the village election March 18. Those 2 spots are the spots currently held by Mindy Berard and Brian Scarstad.
And I would just add, since my spot is not up, if anybody had any questions or would like some information about what it's like or what the time commitment is, I would be more than happy to answer anybody's questions.
Thank you.
All right, any further comments?
I think he's waving.
He's waving.
Points.
I have no intention of running.
Can you identify yourself for the record?
David Steinmetz from the law firm of Zarin and Steinmetz. Very briefly, we wrote a letter late this afternoon asking your board to consider scheduling the public hearing on the Toll Brothers matter. It would allow you enough time to provide adequate notice. I know you may not yet have received your final comments from the Planning Commission, but at our meeting with the Planning Commission last week, they indicated they would get that completed no later than January 22nd, which would therefore get their comments to you in advance of the public hearing. So this is simply a procedural request that we're making tonight.
I understand that, and we did receive that this afternoon. Certainly our standard practice, which I think we're inclined to stick with, is to get back the comments from our Planning Commission and from Westchester County prior to posting the public hearing. I am inclined to agree with you that we have a pretty good sense of what they will say, having been through this process once, but I do think in deference to our past practice, it makes sense for us not to post that public hearing until we have those. I realize that slows you down by a couple of weeks, but I'm afraid that's part of the process.
Just at the risk of overstaying my welcome, would you consider scheduling it subject to canceling it if you do not have their comments?
No.
Okay? Go home, good night.
Okay. Thank you. If there is no further business, is there a motion?
Good night, David.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all. We'll be going into work session and discussing a number of matters, including some further detail about the renovation we propose at the pool. See you all in a couple of weeks.
Good night.